What is going on, everybody? Today we have my annual 7-round mock draft. I do this every year leading up to the draft, usually a few days prior, in which I predict every single pick in the draft. I know I'm not going to get every single pick right. That's just not how the draft works, but I'm still excited to share with you guys my full 7-rounder here today. So, yes, I made every pick. We're going to go over every pick. I'm going to try to get through each one fairly briefly because we just don't have all day. We could be here for 4 hours going over every pick. Again, this is a predictive mock draft based on what I'm predicting will happen, not necessarily what I would do if I was the GMs. That'll be tomorrow's video. I'm going to upload a 2-round what I would do mock draft, and then Thursday we're going to have one more 1-round predictive mock draft with trades. Keep in mind this mock draft does not have trades because that would just be way too much to handle. So we're not going to waste any more time. We're going to hop right into it. We are already starting off with a bang. I have Georgia pass rusher Travon Walker going number 1 to the Jacksonville Jaguars. This pick has been penciled in as Aiden Hutchinson since the Combine, and I have always agreed with that. However, just yesterday, pretty much every major betting site has made Travon Walker the favorite for the number 1 pick. And I know that sounds insignificant, but it's not. It is probably legit. I don't think all of those betting sites would have made that change if they didn't know anything. Now, throughout this final week leading up to the draft, you're going to see a lot of rumors. Some of those rumors may be true, some of those may be not. So all of this Travon Walker to Jacksonville thing very well could be smoke. But based on everything I've read, I believe it's legit. If I were to guess who goes number 1 overall right now, I think it's Travon Walker. I think there's certainly a shot. It could be someone else like an Aiden Hutchinson or an Ikem Ekwonu. Those are the other 2 names I've seen as possibilities. But as of right now, I think Travon Walker is the pick. This just seems like a Trent Baalke pick for right and wrong. Personally, I think this would be a massive mistake on the part of the Jacksonville Jaguars. But nonetheless, that certainly is good for Detroit because Aiden Hutchinson is on the board. That feels like a no-brainer. Perfect fit for the Dan Campbell locker room. As a Lion fan, I would be good with Hutchinson or Thibodeaux here. I have pretty much matching grades on the 2 of them, but I don't think Detroit is going to pass on Hutchinson if he falls. The Texans at 3 go with Ikem Ekwonu, the offensive tackle from NC State. Tackle isn't the biggest need for the Texans, but they got to go best player available. They got to go for guys who can help shift their culture, and Ikem Ekwonu is definitely a high-character guy, so I think he would make sense in that regard. Kayvon Thibodeaux goes to the Jets. I'm very curious to see where Thibodeaux ends up. I don't think he's going to fall past like 7 or anything, so I would say 2, 3, 4, and then either Giants pick. I think it's probably where he ends up. In this scenario, he does go to the Jets. I could see this being Sauce Gardner. I could see this being an offensive lineman. Maybe they take a wide receiver at 4. However, I think the value here with Kayvon Thibodeaux is very good, and I think this would be the right pick for the Jets. The Giants at 5. This is where we get interesting. So Evan Neal is the top tackle on most people's boards at this spot, myself included. But the Giants have been linked to Charles Cross for a while, and again, that could be smoke, but Charles Cross has been linked to the Giants way before this week, so I think the Giants realize that if they want their choice of the offensive lineman, they're going to have to pick one at 5 because Carolina has a massive needed offensive tackle that very well could be where they go at 6. So I would expect the 5th pick to be an offensive tackle and then the 7th pick to be somewhere on the defensive side of the ball. I guess depending on if Kayvon Thibodeaux or Sauce Gardner falls, it probably ends up being one of those 2. The Panthers at 6, in my opinion, this is not only the most fascinating pick of the draft, but also the pick that really will shape how the rest of this draft goes. If it's a tackle going here to Carolina, what happens to the quarterback board? How far does Malik Willis fall? Does somebody trade up for him? But I have Carolina picking Willis at 6, and I feel somewhat confident about my rationale behind it. So I don't think Carolina should do this. I think they should pick Evan Neal. I think they should just run the card up and do that. But Carolina realizes that they don't have a starting quarterback next year. I do not see them starting Sam Darnold next year. And I think this front office, particularly head coach Matt Rule, realizes that they need a home run or else some jobs will be lost. Drafting Kenny Pickett is not swinging for the fences. I think they need to swing for the fences, get a guy like Malik Willis who has a chance to be very, very good, and keep those guys employed. I think Carolina would probably be the worst case scenario for Malik Willis, because rather than going somewhere with a coaching staff who has good security and where Willis can sit and develop for a year or two, he has to be really thrown into the fire immediately in what is a dumpster fire situation. So I'm really hoping Willis does not end up in Carolina, because I think that just smells like disaster, but I don't trust the Panthers not to make that mistake. Sauce Gardner goes to the Giants here at 7. I think assuming one of Thibodeau or Gardner will fall here, they will be the pick. Really not much else to go over. Nice move by New York. And then the Falcons at 8. I think this is another pivotal pick just because Atlanta could go so many different places. They could go on the defensive side of the ball. They could go wide receiver. Quarterback is a wild card, particularly if Malik Willis is on the board. I don't think they would go that route, but I suppose it's possible. But I have them going with Garrett Wilson out of Ohio State. He is my number 1 receiver in this year's draft class. And I think Atlanta recognizes that they're going to be bad. They're probably going to have a pick next year. They're probably going to pick their franchise quarterback next year. So why not supply him with weapons? You have Kyle Pitts. Now you get Garrett Wilson. There's certainly some rationale that this should be a defensive player like a Derek Stingley or a Jermaine Johnson, because the Falcons' defense, well, it's not very good. But I have them going with Wilson here. Good value. Fits a need. Seeing how the top 8 has played out, the Seattle Seahawks walk away big winners out of this first round, somehow getting Evan Neal, my second-ranked player in the entire draft class, to fall to them here at 9. And Neal falling to 9 is no fault of his own. It's just sort of how the board played out, with the Giants preferring Charles Cross and the Panthers picking a quarterback. I could see Evan Neal going as high as 3 to the Houston Texans, but Seattle's going to be lucky to land him here. Another team who could look at the defensive side of the ball, Stingley and Johnson both make a lot of sense here. But if Evan Neal's on the board and tackle is a need, I think it would be hard for Seattle to pass on him. Drake London, wide receiver, USC to the Jets. I have been an outspoken, not a Drake London guy. I have him as my wide receiver 6. But I understand the fit here with the Jets makes a lot of sense. Get a big body target for Zach Wilson. So I wouldn't totally hate this pick just because of the fit. But value-wise, I don't think Drake London's a top 10 prospect. I believe I have him 31st overall on my board. So I just don't see him as a top 10 guy. For me, that's about it. But fits a need, and I think he's a good fit. Kyle Hamilton goes to the Washington Commanders, going with the best player on the board. I know they've been heavily linked to a number of receivers. This could be Jameson Williams. This could be Chris Olave. But I think the Washington Commanders, I'm still getting used to that, are going to focus on the defensive side of the ball here, particularly if Hamilton is still on the board. The Minnesota Vikings at 12, they also walk away tickled pink as they get Derek Stingley, who probably won't fall to 12 in real life. I've seen him linked to the Texans at 3. I think he's currently the odds-on favorite to go number 3 overall to Houston. I could also see Atlanta picking him at 8, Seattle at 9, maybe the Jets at 10, although that one's a little bit less likely. So chances are he probably doesn't fall to 12, but if he does, Minnesota's going to run that card up. The Texans at 13 go with Devin Lloyd, linebacker from Utah. I have not seen Lloyd mocked to the Texans really at all, but I think it makes a lot of sense. Again, the Texans need guys who can help build the culture, build the foundation. Linebacker is a pretty big need for the Texans. I think Devin Lloyd will be able to come in, make an early impact right away, and I think he'll be a big leader for that organization going forward. So I think on and off the field, Devin Lloyd would make a lot of sense here for the Texans with their second first-round pick. Jermaine Johnson goes to the Ravens here at 14. There's been a ton of top 10 buzz about him. I've heard him linked as high as possibly the New York Jets at pick 4. He's been heavily linked to either of the Giants picks. Maybe Atlanta goes that route. Maybe Seattle does. But with players like Stingley and Neal falling off the board and the Falcons choosing to go offense, that's what propels Jermaine Johnson to fall here. But again, I think the Ravens would be pretty happy with this. Get someone who's going to be an NFL-ready pass rusher right away. Had a great season at Florida State. Was fantastic in the Senior Bowl. The Philadelphia Eagles at 15 go with Jordan Davis, the big interior defensive lineman out of Georgia. Maybe not Philadelphia's biggest need, but Jordan Davis is Howie Roseman written all over him. You got Fletcher Cox on one side, Javon Hargrave on the other, and then boom, Jordan Davis in between those guys is the nose tackle. That run defense is going to be damn good in the city of brotherly love. New Orleans at 16 goes with Trevor Penny, the tackle out of Northern Iowa. It's no secret that the Saints really need tackle badly and wide receiver. They have been linked to drafting a quarterback. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't really see a reason to. I don't think any of these guys left on the board really provide that much more for the short term and arguably the long term than Jameis Winston. So unless they're moving up and packaging these picks for Malik Willis, which I also don't think is happening, then I would be very surprised if New Orleans goes with a quarterback. So as we look at their two big needs, wide receiver and tackle, the tackle board is far more depleted than wide receiver. There have only been 2 receivers off the board so far with Wilson and London. And of the top 4 tackles, Trevor Penning is the only one left. The Chargers at 17 will make a lot of sense for Penning, so the Saints are going to make sure to scoop him up now, and they'll still have one of the really good receivers on the board at 19. So the Los Angeles Chargers probably would have gone with Trevor Penning in that scenario, but instead they will settle, in quotations, for Jamison Williams out of Alabama. I think this would be a very good value pick here for the Chargers. He's my 8th ranked player in the class, my wide receiver 2. The Chargers don't need wide receiver as much as some other positions. They have Mike Evans, Jesus Christ. They have Mike Williams, and they have Keenan Allen, who are a great duo, but they could use a third guy. They don't really have anybody who can break the top off of the defense, so that's exactly what Jamison Williams can do. Probably not going to play right away as he's recovering from the torn ACL, but all signs point to his rehab going quicker than expected, so he should be able to hopefully return fairly early into the season. The Eagles at 18 go with Trent McDuffie, the defensive back out of Washington, can play corner, can play safety as well. I imagine the Eagles are probably going to try him out at corner first, and I would expect Trent McDuffie to work there. If it doesn't, he has the versatility to play safety, another position of need for the Eagles. So you're pretty much killing one bird with 2 stones. You have McDuffie, who can play 2 different positions, trying to figure out where he fits best along your defense. The Saints at 19 go Chris Olave, wide receiver, Ohio State. I told you, it's worth it to wait on the receiver for pick 19 because you're going to get someone to fall. Even though Jamison Williams is off the board, Chris Olave is going to make a more immediate impact. I really thought about Christian Watson here from North Dakota State. I had the Saints getting him at pick 19 in my last mock draft. But I really think they're going to want someone who's going to make an early impact, someone who may never be a superstar, but is going to be a safe pick at wide receiver, and I think that's what Chris Olave is. The Steelers at 20, I don't feel overly confident about this, but I have them going with Kenny Pickett, quarterback out of Pitt. I could definitely see a world where the Steelers don't go with a quarterback in round 1, particularly if they stay here at pick 20. But if they really like the value of Kenny Pickett, I think it would be hard to pass up. What I think is going to happen, I think Kevin Colbert's going to get aggressive. It is his final draft as the Steelers GM. I think he wants to go out with a bang, kind of like Ozzie Newsome did with the Ravens a few years ago. So I think the Steelers are going to try their hardest to move up for Malik Willis. If Carolina picks him at 6, that's kind of hard to do, but I think some of those teams in the 8 to 12 range, maybe like a Minnesota or a Washington, both of those teams are certainly trade-down candidates. If Malik Willis is still on the board there, I would really expect the Steelers to try up and make a move for him, but obviously there are no trades today, so they're going to go with Pickett. Again, I don't feel overly confident about it, but I could see it. Zion Johnson of the Patriots here at 21. This feels like a very Patriots type of pick. They traded away Shaq Mason. Here's your Shaq Mason replacement. Enough said. George Pickens, wide receiver, Georgia, to the Green Bay Packers. George Pickens is the prototypical Packer receiver. He's fast, he can block, and he's big. Unlike some of these other Packer receivers that they've recently gotten, George Pickens is actually very, very good at football. And as somebody who has been very high on George Pickens, I really hope he does not end up in Green Bay, because I really want to root for him. Boye Mafe, edge rusher, Minnesota, to the Arizona Cardinals. They could use some more help along the edge, and Boye Mafe has the upside to be very good. I don't think I would take Boye Mafe in the first round personally. He's a lot of work to do, and he is one of the older prospects in this draft class. But with the athletic upside, I could see it being hard for Arizona to pass. At 24, the Cowboys go with Devontae Wyatt, defensive tackle out of the University of Georgia. He had a fantastic season for the Bulldogs this past season. He's also an older prospect at 24 years old, but I think he's a lot more ready to go on this season than a guy like Boye Mafe. Along with his athleticism, I think Wyatt is an extraordinary talent. There have been some recent reports about a domestic violence issue with him that happened a couple of years ago, so he'd be a perfect fit for the Dallas Cowboys because Jerry Jones does not care if you're a criminal. He'll pick you anyway. Let's wrap up the first round, starting with the Bills at 25. They go with Dax Hill, Defensive back out of Michigan. I imagine he would probably play slot corner for the Bills as a rookie and then eventually transition over to safety. Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde both are not getting any younger, so Daxton Hill could be a long-term replacement for them, but I think he's versatile enough to make an impact as a rookie. Desmond Ritter to the Titans. I feel strongly about this one. I have the Titans moving up to get Ritter in my last mock draft. This time he falls to them at 26. I could really see this happening. I don't know how Titans fans would feel about a quarterback, but the way I look at it is Tennessee's a very good football team, but they realize Ryan Tannehill is probably not going to win you a Super Bowl. General Manager John Robinson is known as a risk taker. He likes to roll the dice. I could see them rolling the dice here on a high upside quarterback in Desmond Ritter. This is a good situation for him. He gets to sit behind Tannehill probably for a season or so. Tannehill's still locked up on that big contract, so they can't really get rid of him yet. That would certainly be the rationale against drafting a quarterback, but I don't know how much longer the Titans feel like they have in this window, so I think they would certainly at least consider the idea of picking a quarterback. Kyer Elam, cornerback out of Florida to the Bucs. This is one of my favorite picks in the draft because it just feels like it makes sense. Kyer Elam feels like a Bucs pick. I know Tampa Bay is very good at corner as is. They re-signed Carlton Davis. They have Jamel Dean. They have Sean Murphy-Bunting. But there was a point in time last year where all three of those guys were hurt. Plus, Dean and Murphy-Bunting are both free agents at the end of the year. Kyer Elam is still a little bit raw. He still has a little work to do. So I think sitting behind those guys for a year and being depth for now would be good, and then he would be a full-time starter in 2023 depending on what you do with Dean and Murphy-Bunting. So I think that pick would make a lot of sense here for Tampa Bay. Tyler Smith, tackle out of Tulsa to the Green Bay Packers. I really like Smith's upside. I'm not sure if he's going to play tackle or guard at the next level. I feel like not a lot of people would like a first round for them if it ended with George Pickens and Tyler Smith. I honestly think that's a good haul for Green Bay. I've obviously been very outspoken for my love of George Pickens, and I think Tyler Smith is the best tackle on the board. I actually have a higher grade on Smith than Trevor Penning, so I think this would be a solid pick for them. Kansas City, of course, has back-to-back picks. They start with George Karlaftis, the edge rusher out of Purdue. High floor, high motor player. Doesn't necessarily the upside with the length that you look for, but the Chiefs need some new blood on the defensive side of the ball, and I think he can provide that. Then they go with Christian Watson, the wide receiver out of North Dakota State. They have some solid receivers for this year. Juju Smith-Schuster, who only has 1 year on his contract. Mecole Hardman, who only has 1 more year left. And then Marquez Valdes-Scantling. I think the Chiefs realize that none of those guys are probably going to be a high-end wide receiver one, and Christian Watson has that upside. He's still very raw. He does not have great hands. He has a small route tree, and he really did not dominate against poor competition. But with his size, length, and athleticism, he has the ceiling to be very good. Andrew Booth, corner out of Clemson to the Bengals. They could look back to the offensive line here. Kenyon Green and Tyler Linderbaum are both on the board. Linderbaum in particular could make sense because they do have Ted Karras at center, who's fine. But Linderbaum's an option, but I decided to have them go with Booth. I feel like since they went for all the offensive linemen in free agency, they really don't want to force themselves to pick an offensive lineman here in the draft. I think they'd rather go the best player available approach who happens to fit a need. That would be Andrew Booth. I think they could look to use some reinforcements in their corner room, and he would certainly provide that. Detroit at 32. This is a perfect spot for the Lions. There's plenty of talent at wide receiver, plenty of talent at linebacker, plenty of talent in the secondary. I think those are the 3 spots the Lions are going to look at. I'd be very surprised if Detroit were to pick a quarterback here. I'd also be very upset by that. I think that would be a bad move. This seems like an ideal trade down scenario, so I would hope somebody would want to move up here, but there are no trades today. We have to keep the pick. So we're going to go with Jalen Petrie from Baylor. I know a lot more people are mocking guys like Lewis Cine here towards the end of the first round. I could see this pick being seen. I do have a higher grade on Jalen Petrie. However, he's very versatile. I really like what he brings to the table. I'd be good with both Cine and Petrie here, but I would probably prefer Jalen Petrie, and I think he will go earlier than people expect. Now into round 2, we start with the Jacksonville Jaguars. They go with linebacker Quay Walker out of Georgia. The Jaguars let go of Miles Jack. They replaced him with Foye Oluokun. So Oluokun's going to be their cover athletic guy, but now they need someone who is more of a downhill someone who can make plays in the run game, someone who's going to be able to get off blocks. And I think that's what Quay Walker does better than any linebacker on the board. So I think he would be the best fit here. There have been some rumblings about Walker in the first round. That really wouldn't surprise me, and this is practically a first-round pick. But he's going to go here to the Jaguars at 33. The Lions go with Jahan Dotson, wide receiver out of Penn State. I would prefer the Lions to look for a bigger-bodied X-receiver like a George Pickens type of player. Not that I think Pickens will be on the board for us. If he is, we better pick him. Jahan Dotson is not that, but I think Jahan Dotson would still be a good fit here. He's the best receiver on the board, so I would still be very happy with this pick. He's someone who can make plays in the short game, the intermediate game, and the deep game. I think him, Chark, and Amon-Ra would be a great trio, and we have good depth as well behind them of guys like Josh Reynolds and Quintez Cephas. So a year ago, this looked like the worst receiving room in football, and now it really seems like there's something coming together. Even without Dotson, even if we don't pick a rookie early, our receiving room is still forming out pretty nicely, but I would like to pick a receiver on day 2, and I think Jahan Dotson at 32 or 34 would be a good pick. Kyler Gordon, cornerback out of the University of Washington to the Jets. They're going to double down on secondary here early in this round, too. I have been picking Jaquan Brisker as well. We'll talk a little bit about him in just a moment. Kyler Gordon's an interesting player. I'm not sure if he's going to be best on the outside or in the slot long term. He's gotten some round one buzz here and there. I could see that, but he falls to round 2. Tyler Linderbaum, center out of Iowa to the Giants. I remember the days where people suggested Linderbaum going with one of the Giants' top 2 picks. I just don't see that. Now, I think Linderbaum's going to go later than people expect. He could very well be a first-rounder. Cincinnati at 31 makes a lot of sense, but I have them falling here to 36. This would be a very good value pick for New York. David Ojabo, edge rusher out of Michigan to the Houston Texans. I'm very curious to see where Ajabo's landing spot is because I could see him going in the 20s. He probably doesn't fall much farther than this, but I'm curious if a good team, particularly one of the good teams with multiple first-round picks like Green Bay or Kansas City, takes a shot on him. If not, he probably falls to the second round. I don't think a team like Tennessee or the Bengals, not to say those teams would go edge rusher, but those teams have only one first-round pick who maybe are looking for a piece for a playoff push. I don't think they would look at a guy like David Ojabo. So he's going to fall here to the early second round. The Texans don't need guys who can contribute right away because they're still going to be bad next year, but they need guys who are going to be good in the long term and can be culture fits for them, and I think Ojabo would be another culture fit. Jaquan Brisker to the Jets. They lost Marcus May. Ashton Davis hasn't really shown a lot either. And Brisker's a freak athlete safety. I'm surprised he hasn't gotten more first-round love, but I think the Jets would be happy to pick him up here. Lewis Cine, safety out of Georgia to the Bears. Would not shock me at all if he goes in the first round. I'm already mentally preparing myself to have Lewis Cine as a Lion. I will say that as if I don't want that. I'd be cool with Lewis Cine in Detroit. But I have him falling here to the second round. Safety is definitely not Chicago's biggest need, but the value here might be too much to pass up, and Chicago has another pick coming up pretty soon, thanks to the Khalil Mack trade, so there they can more so focus on a need. The Seahawks have back-to-back picks. Starting at 40, they go Arnold Ebiketie. I've had Ebiketie mocked in the first round a lot, but he just happens to fall here. The edge board kind of plays out not in favor of a lot of these first-round edges. I had Boye Mafe and George Karlaftis go in the first round, but guys like Ebiketie, David Ojabo, Logan Hall, those guys kind of slip a little bit. But Seattle would be happy to pick him up. Seattle has hit 2 home runs in this mock draft so far tonight. The Seahawks go quarterback Matt Corral out of Ole Miss with their other pick. I'm pretty sure this is the same selection I gave them last time. I'm really not sold on any of these teams picking quarterbacks, I've got to be honest, but I have seen Corral's name linked with Seattle, and then here in the early second round, I could see that being the route they go. Sky Moore, wide receiver, Western Michigan, to the Indianapolis Colts. They could use more of a slot receiver, someone who can be reliable there. And I think that's what Sky Moore can do. Logan Hall, defensive lineman at Houston to the Falcons. He has good versatility, can play inside and on the edge. He's gotten some first-round buzz that really wouldn't surprise me. Kind of like his former college teammate Peyton Turner at Houston last year. Only difference is I think Logan Hall is quite a bit better than Peyton Turner. Treylon Burks here at 44 to the Browns. I know this is probably later than Burks has gone in anybody's mock draft, but I could see him slipping just a little bit. There are some questions about his game. Will he be effective on the outside? He got pretty much all of his snaps from Arkansas in the slot. He's a good route runner. He has good hands, and he can make plays with the ball. but he's questionable as a separator. He wasn't all that great at the combine. His weight was kind of fluctuating, so I could see him fall a little bit. And I feel like it would be a Cleveland Browns-like move to pick up the flashy player who's falling. We saw it last year with Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, although I feel like, again, calling them flashy player who's falling is disrespectful because Treylon Burks is very good, and if you guys followed my draft stuff last year, you know I absolutely loved Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. I had him as my second highest graded defensive player in the entire draft. But nonetheless, I think this would be a good pick here for Cleveland. And then another player who kind of falls a little bit is Kenyon Green, the guard out of Texas A&M. The Ravens are going to gladly pick him up here. There are some players who the media are higher on than the league, and I just have a gut feeling that Treylon Burks and Kenyon Green are examples of that. Leo Chenal, linebacker out of Wisconsin, the Minnesota Vikings, adding some more pieces there on the defensive side of the ball. They added Stingley in the first round. Now they add Leo Chenal, a big thumping linebacker who can do a lot of different things. Cole Strange, guard out of the University of Tennessee, Chattanooga, to the Washington Commanders. Cole Strange is really good. I know a lot of people don't really know his name yet. They might be a little bit surprised when this guard out of Chattanooga goes in the second round, but you heard it here first. He's going to be a good player. Alec Pierce, wide receiver, Cincinnati, to the Chicago Bears. He's a big-bodied receiver, great athleticism. Not a great separator, needs to work on that, but now the Bears add another receiver to join forces with Darnell Mooney. One of my favorite fits in this draft here is Josh Paschal at 49 to the New Orleans Saints. The edge rusher out of Kentucky. He's versatile. He can play edge and in the interior. The Saints like versatile defensive linemen, and I think edge is a bigger need for them than people realize. Marcus Davenport's on the last year of his contract. Cam Jordan's not getting any younger, so I think they could look to add some youth there to their pass rushing group, and they're going to add Paschal. Tariq Woolen, cornerback out of UTSA to the Chiefs. Very traitsy guy, 6'4", runs a 4.26, has a lot of work to do, but I like what Tariq Woolen can bring to the table. I think this is good value for them. Nakobe Dean, linebacker, Georgia to the Eagles. I know you're asking, why the hell is Nakobe Dean on the board at 51? He's another guy who I just think the media is going to be higher on than the league, and I think Nakobe Dean is going to go later than expected. I don't think he's a bad player by any stretch. He's my 29th overall ranked player in the class, and he's my second ranked linebacker behind Devin Lloyd. So I like Nakobe Dean. I don't think he should fall this far, but I just have a weird gut feeling he does, and a lot of this mock draft stuff is gut predictions and gut feelings. Bernard Raymond, tackle out of Central Michigan to the Steelers. I could see him going a lot earlier than this. I know a lot of people have him in the first round. I don't think he goes round one. He probably ends up earlier in the second round, but that's just how the board played out. The Steelers are not going to complain, though. They need some help on the offensive line, and Bernard Raymond can certainly provide that. Travis Jones, defensive lineman out of UConn to the Packers. I saw a rumor today with him getting first-round buzz. If he goes in the first round, that wouldn't totally shock me. I could definitely see that as a possibility. Maybe Green Bay picks him up with one of their 2 picks, but they're going to pick him up here at 53. Packers are having a great draft, in my opinion. George Pickens, Tyler Smith, and Travis Jones. So, in case you were wondering, no, I am not biased against the Packers in my mock drafts, because this would be a home run first 3 picks for them. Khalil Shakir, wide receiver, Boise State to New England. Shakir is a guy who can do a little bit of everything. He's great with the ball in his hands. He'll add a nice playmaking element to the New England offense. Kenneth Walker, running back out of Michigan State to the Cardinals. I think Breece Hall will be the first running back off the board, which is ironic because in this mock draft, I have it being Kenneth Walker. The thing is, there just aren't any teams in the top 54 who I think are going to go with a running back. I thought about Buffalo at 25. I don't think they're going to pull the trigger on Breece Hall in the first round, or Kenneth Walker for that matter. So I think chances are Hall is the first one off the board, but I think Walker's a better fit for the Cardinals. They already had that big bruising back in James Conner, so now you're going to add your smaller, more elusive guy in Kenneth Walker. Dylan Parham, guard out of Memphis to the Dallas Cowboys. They could use some help on the interior offensive line, and I think Dylan Parham is a really, really good player, so that'd be a nice pickup for them. There's Breece Hall off the board here to the Bills at 57. If I were to make a prediction now, I think the Bills move up in the second round to land him. I don't think they're going to pick Breece Hall in round 1, but I think Breece Hall makes a ton of sense for this offense. He'd be a perfect fit. I just get Jonathan Taylor vibes with Breece Hall. I really do. So I think this would be a great pick here for Buffalo. You can get Dax Hill and Breece Hall? Sheesh. That'd be an awesome draft for the Bills. First 2 tight ends off the board. We start with Trey McBride out of Colorado State to the Falcons. Yes, the Falcons are picking a tight end. you're probably very confused, but Arthur Smith loves his 2 tight end sets. He loves tight ends who are well-rounded and can block. As good of a player as Kyle Pitts is, he's not a phenomenal blocker. He's on that team as a weapon in the receiving game. So I think if you add a partner in crime for him like Trey McBride, I think that's a realistic scenario for the Atlanta Falcons. Hayden Hurst is out the door. So I think McBride and Kyle Pitts together would be really fun. Again, getting more help for your future quarterback, whether that's Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, whoever they end up picking probably next season. The second tight end will join him right off the board. It's Greg Dulcich out of UCLA to the Green Bay Packers. They brought back Robert Tonyan on a short-term deal this offseason, but I don't think Tunyan's the guy long-term. Greg Dulcich arguably has a higher ceiling than any tight end in this draft class. Cameron Thomas, edge rusher out of San Diego State to the Bucs. Kind of like the cornerback position, defensive line isn't a huge need for them. They have a lot of good edge rushers, but those guys are not getting any younger. Guys like Jason Pierre-Paul and Ndamukong Suh, they're starting to get a little bit older, so I think getting younger there could make sense. I wanted to pick a guard for them here, but there just weren't any good enough on the board, so they're going to settle here with Cam Thomas. Calvin Austin of the Niners. Oh boy, I am drooling at the thought of this idea. Calvin Austin in a Kyle Shanahan offense. That's all I'm going to say. That would be so much fun. Kirby Joseph, safety, Illinois to the Chiefs. Juan Thornhill's a free agent at the end of the year, and he wasn't particularly good last year, so I think he could develop Joseph a little bit. Thornhill could be out the door, and if you wanted to, you could move Thornhill around the defense. He's a versatile player. Maybe have him in the nickel. Have Kirby Joseph at 3 safety. I don't know, just an idea. Luke Fortner, center out of Kentucky to the Bengals. I really like Luke Fortner. And again, Ted Karras can always play guard, so I think that would make sense. And then Troy Anderson, linebacker at Montana State to the Broncos. He's an athletic freak. Pair him with Baron Browning, who's also an athletic freak. That sounds like a lot of fun to me. Now on to the third round. The first player off the board is Nick Cross, safety out of Maryland to the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm very high on Cross. He's the 32nd overall player on my board. I have a higher grade on him than Lewis Cine, and that's not any shade towards Cine. That's just more so that I'm super high on Nick Cross. He's a little bit raw, but I really like his upside, and I think this will be a great pick for the Jaguars to open up the third round. Zion McCollum, cornerback out of Sam Houston State to the Detroit Lions. The Lions have some talent at corner. Jeff Okudah, hopefully he can play well this year, but I guess you can't really count on him. Amani Oruwariye had a very underrated season last year. You have Jerry Jacobs in the slot, who was good as an undrafted rookie. We just drafted Jalen Petrie today, who can also play the slot. So I wouldn't mind seeing the Lions roll the dice here early in the third round on a high upside corner in Zion McCollum, who has all the traits in the world and I think has the character that would fit this Detroit locker room and culture. Alex Wright, edge rusher to UAB to the Giants. I think Alex Wright really isn't being talked about by anybody, but I think he's a lot better than people realize, and I could see him going here in the third round. John Mechie, wide receiver, Alabama to the Texans. Again, focusing on culture fits, guys who can embrace being in this organization and being leaders for this team. John Mechie tore his ACL, I believe it was the SEC championship game against Georgia, but he's a reliable receiver, good route runner, good hands, great blocker. So I like this fit. I think the Texans are killing it in this draft. Chad Muma at pick 69. Nice to the Jets, and I think this is a nice pick. Muma is a very high floor player who I think will be able to compete at a high level pretty early on. Bo Melton, wide receiver, Rutgers to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Adding some more playmaking here to the offense. Bo Melton's a guy who can really make plays in the short game. He's not the biggest guy, but he is a weapon with the football in his hands. Maybe the Jaguars, again, will prefer more of an X receiver. That's definitely not Bo Melton. But there aren't many great outside receivers on the board here. So I think this will be a fun pick. Kyle Phillips at UCLA, definitely not an outside receiver. He is a slot guy through and through, but he's a damn good one. So the Bears double down on receiver. They add Alec Pierce and then Kyle Phillips. The New England Patriots are jealous. If you understand why, it'll make sense. Jalen Armour-Davis, cornerback out of Alabama to the Seattle Seahawks. He's a raw player, but has the traits to be very solid. Seattle likes very traitsy corners, so I think he could make sense there to the Seahawks. Sam Howell is finally off the board. He goes at 73 here to the Colts. There just weren't any teams who I thought were going to go with a quarterback after my fourth QB, Matt Corral. went off the board. I think Howell should go earlier than this. I have Howell as my QB2 in this draft class, only behind Malik Willis. So I think this will be a really good pick for the Colts. You have Matt Ryan, who's good, but he's not getting any younger. He showed a little bit of aging last year, so it's just good to have that insurance policy in place. And the value here might just be too much for them to pass up. Cam Taylor-Britt, cornerback out of Nebraska to the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons need help in the secondary bad. A.J. Terrell was fantastic last year, but outside of him, there isn't a whole lot, so they're going to try to develop Taylor-Britt into becoming something. Zach Tom, tackle out of Wake Forest to the Broncos. He's a very versatile player. He can play guard, he can play center, along with offensive tackle, so the Broncos can use him in a variety of different ways. Drake Jackson of the Ravens, the pass rusher at USC. I had Drake Jackson going to Baltimore in the second round in my last mock draft, and to be honest, his range is probably more so in the second round, but he just happened to fall here in round 3. Raw pass rusher, but has a lot of traits and a lot of upside. Who better than Baltimore Ravens to develop a raw edge rusher? I know they drafted Jermaine Johnson in the first round, but why not take a shot on a guy whose player archetype you have a high track record of developing? Cam Jurgens, center out of Nebraska to the Vikings. The Garrett Bradbury thing just hasn't really worked out. I believe Minnesota declined his 5th-year option. So there you go. Here's your replacement. Fedarian Mathis, interior defensive line out of Alabama to the Cleveland Browns. He doesn't have a high ceiling, but he'll be good right away. Very good run stuffer, and I think he'll be a clog in the middle of that Browns defensive line. This pick at 79, this was my favorite pick of the entire video. Of all 262 picks I made today, Max Mitchell of the Chargers. This makes too much sense. They weren't able to land Trevor Penning in the first round, so they settle for Jameson Williams, who got a borderline elite grade for me. And instead, they have to wait until the third round to pick their tackle in Max Mitchell. I have a higher grade on Mitchell than I do on Trevor Penning. I'm higher on Mitchell than a lot of people. I'm lower on Penning than a lot of people. If the Chargers end up with Jameson Williams and Max Mitchell as their first 2 picks, good God, that would be awesome for them. JT Wood, safety out of Baylor to the Texans here at 80. This might be a little bit high for them, but he's a super freakish athlete. And the Texans have so many picks in this range, why not take a swing? Why not try to get a guy who could be a really, really good football player? And I think JT Woods has that upside. The Giants at 81 go with Christian Harris, linebacker from Alabama. He's super athletic, but he's super raw. Hopefully the Giants can develop him because the ceiling with him is sky high. Sam Williams, edge rusher out of Ole Miss to the Atlanta Falcons. They could use some more help on the pass rush end of things. Sam Williams does have some small character concerns, but he performed well at the Combine, and he's a good football player. I like that pick for them. David Bell, wide receiver, Purdue to the Philadelphia Eagles. This screams Howie Roseman. Pick the unathletic receiver. I actually do think David Bell is pretty good, though, but I don't know. He just seems like an Eagle pick to me. Roger McCreary, corner out of Auburn to the Steelers. McCreary feels like a Steeler to me. They like their slot corners who have the versatility of playing on the outside. Roger McCreary's range might be a little bit more towards the second round, but he happens to fall here until round 3, and I think the fit here in Pittsburgh makes a lot of sense. Brian Asamoah, linebacker out of Oklahoma to New England. Pretty much the same situation as Christian Harris. He's a very talented, athletic linebacker, but he's raw. Who else but Bill Belichick to develop him? So I like that landing spot for Asamoah. Jamari Sawyer, offensive lineman out of Georgia to the Raiders. He played tackle last year. I think he has the versatility to play guard at the next level, so that'd be a good pick for them. Sean Ryan, pretty much the same boat as Jamari Sawyer. Tackle in college, probably going to play guard at the next level, and the Cardinals could use guard pretty badly. Channing Tindall, linebacker out of Georgia to the Cowboys. While we're on the theme of raw athletic linebackers, here's another one. I think the poster children for athletic linebackers with upside in this class are Christian Harris, Brian Asamoah, and Channing Tindall, and they all are here on the same graphic within 8 picks of each other. Fitting. The Bills at pick 89 go with Perrion Winfrey from Oklahoma. Harrison Phillips signed with the Minnesota Vikings in the offseason, so he's out the door. Boom. Here's your replacement. Luke Godke. I think it's Godke. There we go. Offensive lineman out of Central Michigan to the Titans. He mainly played tackle in college. I don't know if he has the length to play tackle at the next level. Maybe he'll move over to guard. But I think this could be a pretty good pick here for the Titans. Marquise Haynes, guard out of Oklahoma to the Bucs. Here's your guard at Tampa Bay. I don't know if Haynes is going to start right away, but he might have to because they could really use another guard. Abe Lucas, tackle out of Washington State to the Green Bay Packers. I think this is where I had Lucas going in my last mock draft. I think the Packers are going to look to add some more offensive linemen. We already had to pick Tyler Smith in the first round, who's a high ceiling guy. I think Lucas is more of a high floor guy. I think he's going to be a good player, but probably does not have the upside to be very good. Marcus Jones, cornerback out of Houston to the Niners. I was thinking about this pick. Here's one way to put it. He's Calvin Austin, but on defense. So they're both super short. They're both unbelievably fast. They're both unbelievable playmakers with the ball in their hands. So now they're on the same team. Who knows? Maybe Marcus Jones will be the new wide back in San Francisco's offense if they trade Debo. I don't know. Just a thought. Martin Emerson, corner out of Mississippi State to the Chiefs. This is very good value. I really like Martin Emerson. So the Chiefs went for a big swing at corner in the second round with Tariq Woolen. Here's somebody who I think has a better chance of competing early on. Darian Beavers, linebacker, Cincinnati. The Cincinnati kid is going to play for Cincinnati with the Bengals. So you keep the hometown kid in town. And then Wan'Dale Robinson to the Denver Broncos here at 96. He gives their offense a new playmaking element. I really think Wan'Dale Robinson on a team like Denver, who has talented receivers, but those receivers are not known for their explosiveness, let me tell you. So now you're adding someone who can really be a weapon with the ball in their hands. I think that'd be really fun, and I think Denver would be a super interesting landing spot for Wan'Dale Robinson. Final few picks here in round 3. Keep in mind, this is not the end of a mock draft because we still have rounds 4 through 7 to get to. Jeremy Ruckert, tight end, Ohio State, to the Detroit Lions. TJ Hawkinson is definitely a long-term piece for the future, but I think the Lions may look to add another tight end at some point in this draft. Brian Robinson Jr., running back out of Alabama, to the New Orleans Saints. They need that big, power, bruising back. I think he'd be a really good complement with Alvin Kamara. Thayer Munford, offensive lineman out of Ohio State, to the Browns. He originally played tackle at Ohio State, ended up playing guard last year. I'm curious to see which position he really sticks at in the NFL. Tariq Castro-Fields, cornerback out of Penn State, to the Baltimore Ravens. They really need depth at corner pretty badly. They were playing practice squad players at the end of last season. Dameon Pierce, running back out of Florida, to the Eagles, very similar to Brian Robinson and the Saints. He gives you a tough runner who can provide value on third down as a pass blocker. The Eagles don't really have any tough runners. Miles Sanders and Kenneth Gainwell just aren't short yardage guys. So now you have one. Cordell Flott, cornerback out of LSU, to the Dolphins. He's more of a slot guy. And I think this would be solid value here for the Dolphins late in the third round with their first pick of the day. Spencer Burford, tackle at UTSA, to the Chiefs. I think he's a pretty underrated player in this draft class. Chiefs looking for depth at the offensive line. Brandon Smith, linebacker out of Penn State, to the Rams. He's just a complete athletic projection, but the ceiling is there, and the Rams have developed linebackers very well in recent seasons. James Cook, running back, Georgia, to the Niners. I had the Niners getting Cook in the second round in my last mock draft. This time he ends up in the third round. I think he's the type of running back they look for. The Trey Sermon experiment hasn't really worked out, and they like to have a running back by committee. So this will be Elijah Mitchell's partner in crime. Now on to the fourth round. I apologize in advance that these graphics are not as aesthetically pleasing, but this way we can run down through the fourth round pretty quickly. I'm going to go over really all the notable picks here. Zamir White to the Texans. They could use a running back quite a bit. I think he would be a feature back on that team. Darian Kennard to the Ravens, pretty solid value. Isaiah Spiller to the Jets. He gives them a tough short yardage runner. He'd be a nice complement with Michael Carter. Carson Strong to the Giants. I like this pick. I had the Giants picking Carson Strong in the third round of my last mock draft. This time they get him in the fourth. He just makes a lot of sense for them. This staff, led by Brian Daboll, developed Josh Allen. I'm not saying Carson Strong is Josh Allen, but he is parts of Josh Allen's game. So I'm just saying it could be interesting there. Malcolm Rodriguez is a guy I really like. He's an undersized linebacker, but he can do a lot of things very well. Bailey Zappi to the Broncos out of Western Kentucky, the Hilltopper. Bailey Zappi doesn't have the physical skills to be very good, but I actually think he has a high floor. I think he's going to be a really good backup in the NFL, and the Broncos don't really have a lot of needs, so why not get a backup? Pierre Strong from South Dakota State to the Ravens. He gives their offense a nice little explosive running back. Tyson Anderson, safety Toledo. I'm very high on him, to New Orleans. Kingsley Enagbare to the Chiefs. A lot of people think he's probably going to go earlier, but he ends up falling here. Good value. Daniel Falele to the Eagles. I love this pick. The Eagles' offensive line coach has a great track record of developing raw and athletic linemen, and Falele is built like Jordan Mailata, and the Eagles have turned Mailata into an all-pro. So I think Falele in Philadelphia would be really fun. Damone Clark to the Raiders, good player, is coming off the surgery a couple months ago. Probably not going to play as a rookie, but still a good player. Tyquan Fortner, the speedster, to the Dallas Cowboys. I ended up getting him in the 3rd round of my last mock draft. This time he goes to the Cowboys in round 4. Jalen Tolbert, wide receiver, South Alabama, to the Bills. That's very good value. Charlie Kolar to the Titans. I really like him a lot. That'd be a great pick at 131. DeMarvin Leal to the Bucks. Gives him more depth in the middle of that defensive line. Nick Benito to the Niners. PFF has him as like a top 40 player. I just don't see that. He's just so raw. But he is athletic and he has upside. Daniel Bellinger to the Ravens. They like dual tight end sets. I think they could use another guy behind Mark Andrews. Chigoziem Okonkwo to the Packers. I think that could be a very fun pick. I think he'd fit their offense nicely. You got Kalen Barnes, the speedy corner to Baltimore. Jelani Woods. The Rams going with another athletic freak. The Rams are just saying F it with their first 2 picks, getting Brandon Smith and Jelani Woods. Why not just throw 2 darts on a dartboard and hope they hit the center? That's what the Rams are doing here. But if they hit the center, look out. Final pick of round 4 is Ioma Uwazurike to the Titans. I have him as the top 100 player. I think he's being really slept on. So, again, pretty good pick there for Tennessee. Now into the 5th round. The first notable pick here is Verone McKinley, safety out of Oregon of the Broncos. I'm an Oregon fan. My favorite player on the team last year is Verone McKinley. The kid's just a playmaker. He doesn't have the ideal size and length you look for, but he has a knack for the football. Nick Petit-Frere. This is an interesting one because every year there's like an article of like 5 or 6 surprise players who are going to go in the first round, and usually that article is pretty accurate. They usually get multiple right. Most of the guys in that article were not a surprise. I think it was George Pickens, Quay Walker, Lewis Cine, Logan Hall, Travis Jones. Those were the first 5. All of those I could have seen going into the first round before reading that article. The other one was Nick Petit-Frere. So, obviously I'm underrating his stock. I made this mock draft yesterday, keep in mind. I didn't realize his stock around the league was that high. I don't think he's going to be a first round pick, I'll tell you that. But if I were to guess now, I think he's probably going to go on day 2. I didn't realize the league liked him that much. I've got to be brutally honest. So, if the Bears get him at 150, good for them. But at this point, that doesn't actually look like it's going to happen. Caleb Ellaby, quarterback, Western Michigan to the Falcons. He's got some upside for the 5th round. I really like that pick for Atlanta. Why not take a shot on a dartboard there and pick him? Jerome Ford, running back, Cincinnati, the Jaguars. That's a great value pick. He's a fringe top 100 player for me. Jacoby Morant, Damari Mathis, both solid corners. Adam Anderson, the Cowboys. This is an interesting one. So back in like October, November, Adam Anderson looked like a possible 1st or 2nd round pick. Just another high draft pick on that loaded Georgia defense. But there was a rape claim that came in about him. I'm pretty sure he pleaded guilty. I'm not 100% on the specifics of the case, but long story short, obviously that's not good. So, who's a team who's going to be willing to take a gamble on a guy like that who just likes good football players? It's Jerry Jones. So, I could very well see Adam Anderson in a Cowboy jersey. Great football player, but yeah, disturbing stuff. Hassan Haskins to the Titans at 169. I really like this pick because they have Derrick Henry, who's a bruising power back. He's great, obviously. That doesn't need to be explained. I think he's the best running back in football. If Derrick Henry ever needs a breather, Hassan Haskins is like Derrick Henry, but like way worse. Derrick Henry was banged up last year. The Titans made a bunch of average running backs look good. So I think Hassan Haskins there would be a lot of fun. Cade Otton to the Houston Texans at 170. Very good value selection for them. The Cowboys at 176 go Joshua Williams out of Fayetteville State. He was not in PFF's thing, but I think he's a draftable prospect. I think he will get picked, but for whatever reason, he was just not there. Johnny Johnson out of Oregon to the Lions. Maybe that was a little bit biased, giving the Lions one of my favorite Ducks, but whatever. And then at 178, our first special teamer off the board. It's Cameron Dicker, the kicker, to the Dallas Cowboys. Then at 179, Najee Sanders to the Colts. He probably ends up going earlier than this, but I could see him slipping. Questions about his weight at the Combine, but I'm pretty sure at his pro day he measured in fine. So hopefully the weight doesn't prove to be an issue for him, and I could see him going quite a bit earlier than that. Now into the 6th round, I had the Lions going to the quarterback, Skylar Thompson. This is the first time all year I've had the Lions pick a quarterback in any mock draft, and it's in the 6th round. Kobe Bean Bryant to the Giants at 182. Kobe Bryant won the Jim Thorpe Award for the best defensive back in college football, which is obviously interesting because he had Sauce Gardner alongside him. James Mitchell, tight end, Virginia Tech to the Vikings at 184. I think that's a very good value. Moving down the board here, Jeffrey Gunther from Coastal Carolina. That's a nice pick. Mike Hill Wright out of Oregon and Minnesota. That's a good pick. I like the upside of Rashad White to the Chargers. Justin Ross, wide receiver, Clemson. He's an interesting one. Justin Ross is a super highly touted recruit. He was unbelievable as a freshman. Probably would have been one of the first receivers off the board had it not been from a spinal injury. I believe he missed his entire sophomore season. I'll double check that. Played as a junior sparingly. Didn't look like the same player. So I'm not sure where he ends up ending up. I think he's going to get drafted. But I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't, which is certainly unfortunate that an injury completely out of control is probably going to ruin his career. Isaiah Thomas and Percy Butler, solid picks there for the Jaguars. The Tom Brady pick, 199, as linebacker Terrell Bernard to the Panthers. Speaking of New England, they go with Kyron Williams. That's a nice pick. He's a really good receiving back. Just seems like a New England Patriot type player. Brock Purdy to the Bills, adding some depth at the quarterback position. I like Ty Chandler to the Steelers, talented running back. The punt god is finally off the board. Matt Ariaza from San Diego State, the greatest punting prospect since Ray Guy to the Bengals. I know Ray Guy was a first-round pick, and this is nowhere near the first-round pick. I am legitimately curious to see where Ariaza ends up, because I think there's a world where he's like a third-round pick. I don't think it's a likely world, but I think it's possible. So I think that'll be fun. New England goes with the quarterback Jack Cohn from Notre Dame. Running back Keontae Ingram, I think, is really good value. So is Tyler Beatty from Missouri to the Falcons. Darian Kendrick to the Titans. That's an interesting one. Kendrick is a slow corner. You don't like slow corners in this league. There are some character concerns with him, but he has flashed the talent, and the Titans are willing to take shots on questionable characters if they can play football. Isaiah Likely, tight end from Coastal Carolina to the Niners. He's just sort of a tweener. He's not really a tight end, but I don't think he has the explosiveness as a wide receiver, so I think teams are not going to really like that. But I think Isaiah Likely is a talented player. This would be very good value here at 220 here towards the end of the 6th round. Alrighty, this is it, the 7th and final round. Not a whole lot of notable picks here. Plenty of running backs going off the board early. Abram Smith to Cleveland, Zakondre White to the Dolphins, Jarian Ealy to Seattle, teaming up with his former college quarterback Matt Corral. Jonathan Knight to the Washington Commanders. Some other notable picks here: quarterback Cole Kelly out of southeastern Louisiana to the Eagles. Smoke Monday, safety out of Auburn to the Commanders. That's a very good value pick. Jalen Weidermeyer, tight end from Texas A&M to the Steelers. Once looked like a possible 2nd or 3rd round pick, but he was bad at the combine. We'll put it that way. Kennedy Brooks, running back Oklahoma. I like Kennedy Brooks. I have him as a top 150 player. That's good value. Slade Bolden, wide receiver Alabama to the Patriots. Yeah, I think we all know why this pick makes sense. I don't need to go into detail. Bubba Bolden, safety from Miami to the Dolphins. Very athletic player. Never really figured it out with the Canes, but he's going to stick in Miami. We'll see if he develops. Isaiah Pacheco is a nice pick there to the Bucs. Grant Calcaterra at 251 is pretty good value to the Kansas City Chiefs. And then Mr. Irrelevant is Merlin Robertson, linebacker from Arizona State to the San Francisco 49ers. So that's going to wrap this one up. A 7-round mock draft is in the books. Let me know what you thought of it down below in the comments section. Hope everybody enjoyed the video. Make sure to hit the like button. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you're new. Plenty of draft content coming out, before the draft and after the draft over this next week or so. So it should be fun. Peace out.